Future Innovation Summit.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, it is the CEO series where we bring together global leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, and disruptors. Our guest today is Kim Wells, Executive Director of Executive Education at the prestigious Howard University School of Business, located in Washington, D.C. Kim leads one of the premier hybrid executive MBA programs that attracts business executives and industry leaders from around the world. He also leads the executive education leadership offering, which includes advanced executive leadership program, strategic DEI leadership program, global executive leadership program, and diversity supplier certificate. In addition to his work at Howard, Kim is a managing partner of Axum Intelligence. Axum is Kim's private CEO executive practice, executive coaching, and DEI transformation. He was selected by Dr. Marshall Goldsmith as one of the Marshall's global prestigious 100 coaches, which is recognized around the world as one of the premier associations of executive coaches and business thought leaders impacting modern business environments. And we are so honored to have Kim Wells with us this morning. Kim, how are you?
I am so good. And thank you, Ron, just for this opportunity to chat with you in front of our friends around the world. And whenever I talk to you, it's a rich conversation, as I've said. So I look forward to today.
Okay, cool. So you're at the pyramid. I mean, like you're developing and I say designing tomorrow's leaders today. Give us the inside scoop on how do you build that brand of global leadership through the Howard perspective and also through your perspective as a global coach.
Sure, sure. So, just if I could, it's different. The world's changed. If anything, we've all learned the last couple years, the world has changed. And a lot of people are going through a process of really reimagining their careers, their lives, and ultimately who they are and what they would like to accomplish and what will be their impact. So at Howard, we have a legacy for some of you who may not know a lot about Howard. It was founded in 1867. It was generally founded to support freed slaves of that period. Some of the initial programs out of Howard were for teaching and ministry. And Howard, over the decades and years, emerged to be one of the top HBCUs in the world that's had global impact in developing leaders and facilitating change. You think of the Thurgood Marshalls who led Brown versus Board and all the great things that happened at Howard. Yeah. And so it's in our DNA. When I think about our business school and how we've been positioned, particularly in the last 10 or so years, to really evolve some of our activities and our programs in executive education, we're positioned to really now give access to people with the new technologies, Ron, to study with us from around the world and across the country. Because in the past, you had to literally be in Washington, D.C. to do a traditional program. So our positioning is we're here to help you bring out your authentic leadership style and self. We're here to give our students, enable a voice for our students, to really give them an opportunity to really be a part of partnerships and collaborations and activities, both in the States and around the world at all levels. So it's a different kind of place. It's an exciting institution, and we are just very fortunate to have exciting programs to lead the way, really in many respects for the university, but also in the business community to bring professionals of color particularly. So about 96% of our students are still professionals of color.
Okay, cool. You know what I thought about when you mentioned legacy and mentioned Thurgood Marshall? For the people that don't know, a lot about Howard University. From the legacy perspective, Thurgood Marshall was the first African American Supreme Court justice, and
Correct.
the current vice president of the U.S.
Yes.
is a graduate of Howard University. So
Yes.
legacy is still building. You're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
building that. That's cool.
I mean, we have a theme, Howard Forward, and the school is still very much a school of impact. And again, we're very proud of it and what's happening at Howard University. And we continue to see some of the top students from our executive programs participating from undergraduate programs. They could have went anywhere in the world, and they come to Howard because it is a very different and unique environment that really does bring out the very best in leaders.
Okay. So the executive MBA program. Let's talk a little more about that. So what are you seeing from your side? It's sitting at the top of that pyramid in developing these new level of leaders. What's needed? You talked about the change from what happened, what we've gone through during this period. What are
Right.
you seeing as some key drivers in trying to educate the next level of, I'm going to say, global leaders, not leaders, but global leaders?
Absolutely. So, number one, people come to us because they want to understand the global markets. They want to understand global culture, global business markets. A lot of people come to Howard, particularly through that executive MBA program. It's very an interesting profile. The students tend to be around their early 40s.
Mhm.
Most of them have about 15, 16 years experience. Most are mid to senior executives. Some are C-suite, some are major business owners, but they're coming to retool. So they're coming back to say, hey, I've achieved at the highest levels. I've already had impact,
Yeah.
but what else is there? And when this
Mhm.
world changed the last couple of years, for a lot of people, it really became a time of reflection. Hey, what do I need to do to change? How can I better lead my people?
Okay.
What markets do I need to now explore that I maybe haven't before because of some of the luxuries of the past norm? The new norm requires inclusion, engagement at all levels. The new norm requires a different mindset of what these opportunities are and the kind of the frameworks that we put in place to engage these opportunities. So we're sitting very nicely in a situation to really train leaders to help them to pursue uh, those interests and that new knowledge. And in our executive MBA, it's a hybrid program, so it's mainly online, but you having a chance to study with us on campus and do global tours with us. So we're looking forward to really things looking a little bit better with the whole environment around this whole unfortunate virus. But we're hoping this fall to get back on the road and get back to. We're looking at Ghana for one of our first trips and getting back to South Africa. We're also looking at Ethiopia, some other places. I mean, again, as the world opens up to us, we're
Wow.
going to get back out there.
Wow. Wow. I like the term retool.
Yeah.
So if you think of leadership pre-COVID,
Mhm.
skill set, certain set of tools, and now going through COVID and all we've been exposed to over the past 2 years, we need a different set of tools.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that retooling aspect, upskilling, what are some key competencies that change from pre to post or coming out of this 2 year kind of lockdown?
You know, it's really interesting, and I thought about that just in thinking in general about our conversation. You know, the competencies are similar. They're
Okay.
similar, Ron, but the approach is different. And so, what I mean by that is, you're still going to have to be a master of understanding how to analyze economies and master of cultural intelligence, as I like to call it.
Mhm.
Uh, really look at your uh, emotional intelligence levels. I mean, we can always give you tools.
Yeah.
You can study accounting anywhere. You can study
Yeah.
finance anywhere, right? But
Yeah.
how do you come to very unique insights
Mhm.
about what you're seeing,
Mhm.
about what the numbers are telling you, about what we're seeing in the markets That's the difference, I think, of going to high quality universities today. And no knock on anybody. I think everybody should get a great education. But when you go to certain institutions like Howard, we're going to have those conversations. They're compelling, they're authentic, Ron. We don't want to just come in and pretend we know everything. Let's have those conversations. And this is part of the beauty of our programs. We've got people at all levels, from all backgrounds, from all industries. Let's talk about how these competencies have to adjust and be focused to be successful in different markets. So be successful in Ethiopia, very different than being successful in South Africa. Different, and you see what I'm saying? And but sometimes when we study general business, I love this. A lot of the thought out there today that education, and I need to be careful, but we don't want it to be some kind of, where you're you're told what to think. Okay.
Yeah.
What we want education to be is general knowledge, wisdom, understanding, reflection. There's a new leader that's emerging. You're seeing a lot out of some of the younger generations, but you're still seeing it out of the Gen X's and some of the baby boomers that are making these adjustments. But it's very natural to some of the younger generations to do it, because guess what? Their best friends are on Instagram. Their best friends are through social media. They've learned to adjust, but now we got to teach them how to do it in the marketplace in more meaningful and or more strategic ways.
Yeah, you mentioned cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence. So that's totally different from the technical skill set of me being an accountant, of me being an engineer. So this is kind of an overlay on top of that cultural insight, emotional insight as to how we take in and how we, kind of synthesize these and come out and make a decision. Is that kind of what we're talking about here when you talk about soft versus technical?
Absolutely. So the foundation will always be, you have to, it's just like if you think about athletics, you have to know your fundamentals. Okay. That's a necessity. And, all the good programs will teach you that. The next level, though, is to really now be in touch with who you are as a leader. Who am I? How am I going to make impact? What's going to be my influence in a situation? How will I interact with dynamic and brilliant people from different backgrounds, so that I can bring those backgrounds to the table? Again, that's where you're really looking at the heart and soul of inclusion, the spirit of inclusion that's critical to being successful as a business today, as a lot of the research shows. So we have to think differently if we're going to go into new places in the world to succeed. We're going to have a completely open, different. But this doesn't just happen by coincidence. It takes practice. It takes time, really, to study and to engage with different individuals to really understand and to evolve these skills, particularly cultural intelligence. For me, you can lose a lot of business folks out there if you don't know how to engage with people from various cultures. And I think we're all learning that today.
Yeah, that was a big eye opening for me when I moved from New York City to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. That USA kind of mindset, you know what I mean? And getting to a totally different country. And I realized I had to take a step back and understand the culture, understand the thought process, and all these kinds of things. This is why I say what you do is so important, because when you talk about Ethiopia, Ghana, bringing these leaders in, that's a global context.
Yes.
And it kind of disrupts somewhat that, I'm going to say, that USA mindset kind of approach. And the global aspect is what's driving all businesses today for the most part.
Well, people aren't going to as readily receive this concept of American exceptionalism, that we're the best at everything and that please sit back and listen as we speak. That's ridiculous. People also.
Thank you.
and I love our nation. I've got several generations of veterans, so don't write me, folks. But what I'm saying is, if we're all going to better succeed, think about what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa, the emerging markets. There's about 5 or 6 now that are being recognized by IMF as emerging markets where there's amazing opportunities. We have to see and get to who are the individuals that we're trying to work with. What's the market really like there? What are the dreams and aspirations of those people as consumers, as human beings? And we're not going to get there if we come in with, hey, what we do in Los Angeles and in New York City is the only way, or if our training is only coming from a handful of universities. That's where, again, Howard is special, because we become not an alternative, but we become another opportunity that's outside of what can be seen as the traditional educational background. I know some might wonder what I mean by that. Yes, we see ourselves as peer institutions with the top universities in the world. I mean, recently our MBA program was ranked 54 in the nation. I mean, we're the 5th ranked by Bloomberg for networks. So Howard is just an amazing place. So it does offer an alternative, if I could use that term right now, to some of these other institutions that, again, you're trying to hear new voices, you're trying to understand new concepts, new ways to evaluate a problem, new ways to come to solutions. It's just an institution that gives you those platforms. Again, we connect and work with everyone and anyone in the world. But very often, one of the challenges in education today is you do feel like you're being indoctrinated with a bunch of information where we can't really have a rich, fertile conversation about what these issues are. Yes. So I would stop there.
Okay, so that kind of takes us into, in framing that around the DEI leadership program.
Yes.
Give us kind of an overview of the DEI leadership program that you're offering through the executive education offering.
Absolutely. So as we know, after the disruption in the world, all the things that happened in 2020, our favorite year, right? And a lot of leaders came to Howard knowing our legacy as a leader of really facilitating and being an agent of change as a university. And so over time, I mean, we've always done much of this work, but we came up with a more formal process. We had been doing coaching for diversity for years, but we said, let's take it to a more strategic level. So we started to work with more companies in a certificate initiative called Strategic DE&I for leaders. And it could be tailored for organizations that have unique issues and development needs that they want to work through, or it will be open enrollment starting this summer in fall. So we already have a backlog of people very interested in studying with us for that. So what we do really, Ron, is we just have what we call an authentic conversation around this issue, but it's grounded in the business case that, first of all, diversity is everyone. Yeah. Inclusion is an imperative to really unlock and enable your top talent. And equity, of course, when everybody has a stake in this, when everybody sees value to them, people are more motivated, more engaged, right? And so we bring great people like Mr. Ron Thomas to the table to work with us. And we talk with our leaders from Fortune 500s to small companies, just about what does DEI look like for you, or what would you like it to look like for you and your organization? And let's talk about this again as a transformational strategy. We're not looking at this as, yes, it's a social justice, and there's a lot of other components, but how will this affect your bottom line? And I think companies are shocked once we really start to roll out the business case.
Yes.
Really, how much they can benefit from transforming.
So that was going to be my question based on what you were just talking about. DEI business case. It's not a feel good. It's a business case behind it, because when you look at the economics behind companies that are strong in DEI, the financials tell the story.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, go
ahead.
No, I was just going to say, companies led by women, I mean, they outperform other companies. I mean, there's facts for these things. Inclusive companies outperform other organizations. I mean, there's study after study after study that's proving it. I think culture is slow to change sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think as we're seeing the younger generations that say, I'm not even going to go to a company unless they embrace DEI. And so we see the direction, the talent. I mean, again, we're seeing this whole shifting right now where millennials and the new ones, the Gen Zs are even more locked and loaded. They are ready to do something special in the world, but they only want to take their talents to places that are going to embrace diversity, that are going to embrace inclusiveness, really that have a more than just a business mission, but a mission to transform and to engage different populations, different segments of the world and communities that really believe, truly believe in their values. I mean, again, not just values that are up on the wall, but they're values that are practiced by leadership and really getting out and making a difference. So they're seeing businesses a little differently than maybe our generation did, Ron. So it's like, it's a new time. It's a new era.
So I chuckle when you said on the wall because you go to these companies' websites, they have all the most beautiful language. The wordsmiths did their job and they created the best narrative and all these kinds of things. But you look inside, it's totally different.
Right.
And when you look at turnover in that first year, lots of times that's a lot of diverse people are saying, you know what, I thought it was what it was going to be. I got inside and realized it was not that.
Right. Right. And the other piece of it today is more and more popular is the terminology belonging. Did I really feel like I was a part of this company?
Yeah.
Did I really feel that my voice was being heard in meetings? Companies have work to do. I mean, some have done a brilliant job. Again, we're very excited about a lot of our partners right now in our program. We're seeing transformation happening from the C-suite and going all the way down into mid-management to staff levels. But it takes a commitment, usually from the very top of our CEOs and our senior executives. And it has to be something that's lived. We can't just talk about it. We want to live it in our professional lives, certainly, and hopefully outside. But again, for it to be real and for really top talent to go to those places.
So I thought about, you mentioned Ethiopia, you mentioned Ghana, you mentioned South Africa, which we worked on a project together. For global companies, to me, it's so easy to see that we need to expand the level of thought inside of the organization from a diverse perspective. Because how am I sitting in New York going to market to Ethiopia, Ghana, or in Africa, period, or in Europe if we've always been a U.S. kind of mindset? Business case again.
Yeah, it takes first some reflection. Where are we? I think about one project we did with a group. I won't say where but the students were from the continent and they were given an opportunity to start a company and they were going to look for resources from different parts of the world. And they almost 95% of the groups involved in this project selected manufacturers in Europe, manufacturers in the United States, and completely overlooked the continent. And so we had to literally stop the entire program and talk about resources in their own background, markets that they would have access to. And not just that, but think about the impact that you would have if you started to create manufacturing plants and create other opportunities to bring suppliers from different parts of the world. You would change communities. You would change the projection for many. And so, and in your own world, in quote unquote. So, I mean, it's important that we all look at this new mindset, and that it's not just about America. It's not just about the UK. It's not just about what's happening in Germany, et cetera. Great, amazing nations, but there's also emerging opportunities in places like Uganda and Kenya, and people are doing a lot of work. I mean, we know there's got to be this full transformation at all levels to put policies for trade in place and regulations protect against any types of some of the common challenges that are shared, corruption. But I think, there's corruption everywhere. But what can we do to make sure that we are preparing to receive and to engage? So just some of my thoughts around that.
Yeah, so you talk about that mindset. So right away they were looking to go in other regions without looking in their own so-called backyard. So when you talk about the global context, that's what it's about. And educating these new level of leaders that you're bringing through Howard is to look at the world as outside of your back door, unexplored areas. So many opportunities, say, to move into Lagos and create a factory there, whatever it is, the same as you could possibly move to China or someplace else. That's the context we're talking about, correct?
Absolutely. And also to identify talent.
Yeah.
Just think about, there's some amazing fintech innovation coming out of places like Brazil. I mean, you've got great commitments from nations like Colombia and some of the Afro Colombian communities, to make some change. There's a whole world of opportunity out there. And we, I mean, it's almost like a new frontier, and we have to think about that. And we have to expose our students to that. That's one of our commitments at Howard. I mean, yes, let's be globally minded, but let's also think locally. How can your business now embrace, support, and develop talent in some of the places that aren't as fortunate, some of the more marginalized communities, even in the United States? But once we start reaching out, everyone becomes a part of that success as we look to different markets, new opportunities, and staying connected and keeping our mindset open and fresh and sharp about what really can be done today, and not leave it all, Ron, to chance.
Yeah.
Leave it all to happenstance. Leave it all to, the next major challenge that we have. But let's take control and let's do some things proactively.
Yeah, exposure. So I was in one state in the southern part of the U.S. on a business trip, and I was looking through the phone book. So that goes just to tell you how long ago that was. And so they had best of that particular city. And I was looking down through and looking to go out to eat that night. I was looking down, said the best restaurant. So I looked down and they said best Italian restaurant. They said Domino's. I'm like, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I'm thinking exposure. Well, I said, if you always lived in that town, that's possibly the only interaction you would have with an Italian kind of brand in doing that. But I take that back to the so-called C-suite or leadership. If all I'm used to is what surrounds me or what I can see within my eyesight, I don't see across the globe. I don't see in this part of the world. You mentioned Colombia. You mentioned the African countries. How do we expose these leaders to this mindset? What are some key points that you make sure that these leaders walk away from your program and have that global kind of insight and just kind of open their eyes?
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is just to set the stage that business isn't just in the United States. I mean, it sounds rudimentary, but the fact of the matter is we still have a lot of people that think that the United States is where everything's happening. And, it may, unfortunately, you have some of that. And it may not be that we just subscribe to that as our core belief system, but that's how we behave.
Yes.
And so what we want to do is expose people to new opportunities, either through programming, where we bring in other students or give them an opportunity to have a project with somebody in another part of the world.
Yeah.
Again, a big part of what we've done at Howard is and again, in better times, and we're looking forward to things changing with this whole pandemic, but getting on a plane and actually going to South Africa, actually going to Colombia, actually going in the past to Cuba. So, I mean, what we want to do is be able to take you to these places, really get to connect with the people and the business leaders, understand what the environment really is like there. What is it to truly live there? What are the sights and the sounds and the smells of that place. Really get to know it.
Yeah.
Let's get a taste of what it really is to live there and what those people are living for and what you can impact. I mean, so we have to expose people, Ron. You know, I mean, it's today we get a lot of information through the internet. You know, I mean, it's probably overwhelming, but if we can give you the frameworks and build it into our curricula, build it into some of our activities, now we're giving people a true pathway to make those connections and to think a little bit differently and have those conversations about how it's impacted your projection for your own personal future. And then also, you know, how do you think you can really have impact? I mean, you know, it's interesting in our program, Ron, and I'm they're about 42 years old as the average age. So already many of these people are thinking about legacy. What's going to be my legacy?
Yeah.
What do I want to leave behind?
Yeah.
And you know, and I mean, yes, some of it's going to be local. Let's impact and change and transform our communities. But some of it can be global for some. Some people think pretty boldly and strongly. And what is that new frontier?
Yeah.
And we hope to expose them to that at Howard and through some of our programs.
Yeah. I think that's so cool. I talked with a young lady few months back, and she's in a MBA program, and she told me that her partner was a gentleman from Pakistan. She's never met anyone from Pakistan, but she says over the course, the period of the course, in interacting, working on projects together, she says I have such a different understanding of the global context, and
Yes.
and she's late 20s, but she's already seeing that the different kind of context and looking at it through a different lens. And so when you talk about the program, specifically the program at Howard, you're bringing in all these global people, and just the conversation in the room is going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is why this is important.
Yeah. Yeah. I would recommend to any student going to any university, you really should invest in at least a study tour for a few weeks, et cetera. Certainly, if you have the opportunity, I've shared with you, my son's just spent time in London for several months.
Yeah.
And even while he was there, he had a chance to visit a number of other nations and meet leaders and students. It really does. It just really transforms your thinking about really what the world can be and what it is, and really how you can have impact. And so we really want to introduce students to that, particularly some of the younger ones, to that very early on. But if you haven't had that exposure, you know what? It's never too late. You can do an executive certificate with us where we do these things,
Yeah.
or you can be in a formalized program.
Yeah.
And a lot of our great institutions are doing similar things.
Yeah, I always suggest to people, you know, if you're starting out your career, look for a global context.
Yes.
Look for an opportunity to go. If your company is global, try and get placed into a different country outside of your comfort zone and
Absolutely.
learn a new way of thinking, a new way of exposure, a new way of doing business through the lens of someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Otherwise, you'll just you'll have success. But you know, I just think about some of the things I personally have done with coaching, and we may talk about some of that here. But just by opening up and working with executives from Nigeria and Ghana and South in my own private practice, you know, it's expanded my mind. It's expanded my opportunities and my ability to generate resources. Right. So at the end of the day, so and have impact though, and. You know, again, I'm very thankful for those opportunities, but I always am in sharing that with others. Don't just target the same markets and flood the same markets everybody else is in. Consider there's these emerging opportunities around the world. You know, what would be appealing to you? Would it be in the Caribbean? Would it be in these various parts of the world that people are getting exposure? They're getting access to more education. They're seeing, you know, the world differently with this evolution of social media, and they want to be a part of that. They want to be in that game. They want a piece of that pie, you know, and go out, venture out, explore. and you might find something very special for yourself where you can make a change and do something very different.
Yeah, it will. So let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to go into the coaching practice and give us some insights from that angle. So
Okay.
let's take a break now, and we'll come back in a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Identify and book the world's best speakers for your next event. MENA Speakers is the leading speakers and MC bureau in the Middle East. We bring global talent to the region and have established the region as a key global hub for speakers. Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members' business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Okay, welcome back. I want to have a conversation around coaching, but I wanted to start off with saying that you have won an Oscar. And I say an Oscar because when you were selected by Marshall Goldsmith as one of the top 100 global executive coaches, that's winning the Oscars in the coaching business. So, what did that feel like, and getting that notification to say, "Wow, all of the work that you had been doing, and to be recognized at that level"?
It was amazing. I tell you, I'm still reflecting on it all. I have been a fan of Dr. Goldsmith for almost my entire career,
Yeah,
and have followed his teachings and studied a lot of his principles as I've grown. And I had an opportunity to meet a number of people that are in his group, and we were always running into each other. And I was very blessed to be nominated by a prominent gentleman as part of the group that recognized, the things we're doing at Howard and in my private practice, um, and Dr. Goldsmith thought it was worthy of bringing me in. So I again, what's blown me away is just how authentic he is,
yes,
and having had a chance to really chat with them and be a part of some of the meetings that we've had with other just amazing and brilliant and dynamic leaders, from corporate leaders to higher education leaders. And I leave every single meeting and call with just a renewed sense of purpose myself, and really the work we have to do to kind of pay it forward, to really connect and support others. So it's one of the big and major opportunities and blessings in my life, Ron. So thank you for bringing that up.
yeah. Well, your private practice, Axum, specializes in executive coaching.
Yes.
So all of that came about possibly as a result of some of the high level work you're doing with executive coaches. So let's just take a step back for a second. And the people that you coach are high level people.
Yes.
What are some common themes or struggles that you see as a kind of a common thread that's happening? And I'm going to try and frame it within the COVID experience. What are some common themes or points of discussion that you're hearing from your major clients?
Sure. Very often when I work with someone, they're at a period where it's time for some additional reflection.
Mm.
Reflection of, have I done justice to my particular passion or calling or my organization? Have I have I really had the impact that I want to have as a professional? In many cases, particularly a large portion of my clients are professionals of color that have done a lot of the right things to get to a certain level in their organization, maybe senior management, and they're looking to break into C-suite. And those that are in C-suite, they're looking, hey, are there CEO opportunities for me? And they want to, once again, have a meaningful and private opportunity to talk about who they are, how they might be processing in their environment. When we talk about cultural intelligence, that's also an individual thing.
Yeah.
Am I as intelligent culturally as I think? To work with people who are different from me, even as a professional of color. Guess what? They're not necessarily the experts in all things of cultural engagement and cultural intelligence. How do I work with different genders and different groups, et cetera, et cetera? And so what we do in Axum is first, it's reflective. And we think very much about, who your stakeholders are and how are you serving and engaging with those stakeholders. Axum, the name is Axum Intelligence, because what we really look at too, have you really spent time to get to know those individuals, to study really the backgrounds and the aspirations of the people around you? And we do a lot of detailed and comprehensive work around knowing those that you engage with and work with. And once again, really, most importantly, to know yourself, know what kind of leadership you really are bringing to the table, how others might perceive you in the workplace. We all have, Ron, we have gaps in really what reality is and what our perception of ourselves is and our perception of impact. And so we work to close those gaps. So the goal is to prepare you for the next level and also get to a place of satisfaction and wholeness as an individual, as a soul, quite frankly. And so those are the kinds of things that we're constantly working on with Axum.
Yeah. I love the phrase, we all have gaps. And the reason I like that is because sometimes people, because of their level of success, they develop those blind spots and they don't see those gaps.
Yes.
And they don't see those gaps partly maybe because of the fact they don't reflect as to the impact they're having on people or the environment that they're in.
No, absolutely. And today's high level executives, it's just like I talk about men and women in ministry. Who does a minister talk to when they have a challenge?
Who do you know?
And it's the same thing. Like, who can they talk to? And very often we share the same the same models of, hey, get a mentor, et cetera. And that's great, or get a sponsor. But sometimes you have to go outside of the system to a fresh pair of eyes, somebody who can see it differently, who can have a conversation with you that's very objective, in one sense, very reflective. It's authentic, because we're not just trying to drive the same agenda or the same values of the company necessarily, if you understand what I mean by that. We're really trying to take a look at who you are and how are you engaging in this environment. And now we can go back and we can work at some behavioral adjustments and really some mastery of certain business skill sets. But it starts with that individual, and that individual having to have a coach they can trust, and that they can really, really walk through, this whole transformation process and ability to just be myself for a minute. Like I will take my people often down to a little coffee shop, or we'll go by a lake, or we'll go for a walk. It can be very different how we adjust and work together.
Yeah. Understanding that side outside of the context. I always will coach people that say when you're having, if you need to really talk to someone, get them out of the office, get them
Yeah,
out of the environment they're in, go for a walk. And
exactly.
that was what was great about when I worked in New York City, because if I wanted to have an intense meeting, when I was working in human resources, I'd meet that person downstairs and we'd walk around the block. That level
Absolutely.
of conversation was totally different than sitting upstairs in someone's room where they got all the accolades on the wall and all these kinds of things. The blinders are on. I'm great because
Right.
this I'm great.
And let's come out of our role. Let's come out of our typical character.
Yeah.
And by the way, for some might be thinking, well, how can you do a walk with a guy in Nigeria? Well, guess what? We have some amazing technology today. It's called
Yeah.
time, and so we can do some special things where people again come out of their environment, and really just relax. Let's talk about what's happening. Some of it can be intense. So, I mean, again, sometimes people will call me. There's a type of a crisis they want to really sort through. Again, we would go through a very intensive, reflective process.
Yeah.
Again, this is where the intelligence. My concept of coaching is also strategic coaching. So we will do research, and offer out what the scenarios could be, and really how what kinds of behaviors you may want to adjust to be successful, to really get through a period that might be a little more difficult for you. Um,
You mentioned 40, average age 40 years old, whatever it is. Let's back it up for a second, because I mentioned to you the young lady who's late 20s that's in the MBA program now. And I don't want to say it's a coaching relationship, but it kind of is a coaching relationship, not structured. She's struggling. She gives me a call. We kind of talk it through, those kind of things. Would you advise people that are making their first or second step in the career journey to have that coaching aspect and start developing that relationship, as opposed to waiting till I'm 40, beginning to get into a senior level position? Should we start it earlier from a coaching perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, again, if I could use a sports analogy, every high school athlete in America has a private trainer.
Yeah.
And I think if you really want to be really authentic in your reflection and in your planning, and you really want to look, how do I align my talents and skills
Yeah.
really with my destination and my purpose, you're going to need outside assistance with that. And how do we build and identify particular competencies and skill sets that need to be developed? We talked about earlier travel. What places should you travel to? Who should you be talking to? Absolutely, Ron. I think if you're going to really develop and bring out your own talents and abilities, it really pays to have somebody that's very focused on who you are as an individual, as a professional, and then let's start to do the work at how do we evolve that? How do we bring the best of you out so that you can really have that impact that you desire?
Okay. Okay. So let's take it from the other end as we begin to close out. What advice would you give senior leaders, C-suite leaders, on their role in coaching the minus ones or minus twos from them, or setting up kind of a coaching culture inside of an organization? How would you advise them?
Right now, one of the initial things is let's take a pause and let's listen.
Oh,
Let's do a listening tour.
yeah.
Where are your people today? I think while we're going through this great resignation, a lot of it is because organizations and leaders weren't listening. Okay, so let's work on that as an opportunity
Yeah.
first and foremost to see where we are, and really get a great understanding of our current state in the situation. Secondly, yes, let's remember the world has changed. What worked for us in the 2000s, in the 90s, maybe what we learned in business school, 20 years, it's different. People are different, markets are different, expectations are different, and the whole world is going through this process of reflection. So honestly, I believe it's to really think about your mindset, explore where your mind is today, explore really what maybe have been obstacles or barriers to you reaching out and connecting and considering different opportunities, um, both for your organization, but even for yourself. Um, I would always tell an executive, let's spend some time going back over the decisions that we've made. And, if we had an opportunity, all things being perfect, what would we do different?
Yeah.
And then maybe we want to maybe pursue some of those different pathways, and not necessarily outside the organization, but even within your organization. So, I mean, a lot of times coaching is about a pause, you know, um, dare I say, we're not mental health experts,
Yeah.
but we do present that opportunity for people to be reflective. Let's bury the hatchet on mistakes. Let's look to the future
Yeah.
and how we can move forward. And really, who should we be talking to if I do find that I'm overwhelmed and I need to speak to a professional? Again, a coach, someone like myself, I'll refer people out to others. So it's just it's a salah, so to say. For some of you know what I mean there. It gives us an opportunity to slow down the pace, even in the midst of hostile and complex situations. Let's have that period that we're investing in ourselves. Take the time out, explore where we are and where we want to be in the future.
I smile when you mention listening.
Yes.
Listen more, because every body of research that's been done mid-COVID to post-COVID is saying the same thing. The organization has to listen to the people more, um, and get a better insight. You look at these new plans, work from home, work from anywhere, hybrid. A lot of these decisions were made without listening. And this is why there was pushback from the people who had to live
Absolutely.
through those rules you were putting together. It's okay for you to say that you want to come back to the office, but what about the people that's down here? And in a lot of cases, orgs did not listen. And this is why they're paying the price for resignations and all these kinds of things.
And another way to look at listening is to call it inclusion. Okay, is there a spirit of inclusion? Did people feel that they were empowered to share their voice, to share their ideas? I mean, it's terrible that sometimes you can have amazing talent that have dealt with what they might consider microaggressions throughout their situation. And this is not even based on race or gender or anything like that. It's just like the organization culture is set up so that there are these aggressions. So easy to fix sometimes from a leadership perspective. And it usually starts with listening, being there. There's the old saying, I believe it was Caesar said it, I came, I saw, and I conquered. And it's like, are you there first? You got to show up, you got to be there. Are you seeing what's really happening? And then do you have, the aspiration and the willingness to change these things? And so again, that's what I like to talk about with people. Where are we in that process of personal discovery and self-development? And really, where are you to really have the impact you want to have, both in your organization and in your life? Like I said, Ron, in your life. We're only here for a short period of time, so let's make sure we make the best of it and have the impact we want to have.
Yeah, make that stamp. So the listening piece, I smiled because of the fact that I've talked to people and I said, and you talked about the concept of listening. Oh, I always listen. And then I'm looking at other people in the room and they're doodling because they know this person doesn't listen. You didn't listen to what I just said. I said, listen more.
Yes.
So they listen. I call it listening for a pause so they can interject their thoughts into that, because what I just said went directly over their head. Do you find that?
Absolutely. And it's funny because with some of my clients, I will do what we call a shadowing. And I see things like that. That's part of the blind spot leaders will have. They don't realize they're in a meeting. They're not listening, or there's very selective listening to certain people in the room, and you missed another person that had very valuable insight to share.
Yeah.
And so again, that's again where just the pause, the reflection of a good coach. And I would tell anyone, get a well-trained coach that's certified, that's engaged, with other brilliant coaches. So this is not motivational speaking and so forth. I get a lot of that from people who've had bad coaching, but it is a systematic process of reflection and really development and strategy. Really, it's a very strategic type of endeavor when you're going through a coaching process.
So, what better coaching advice from one of the top 100 global executive coaches from across the globe? Kim, thank you so much for being a guest today and making time. I know your schedule is busy, but thank you so much for being a part of the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for having me, Ron. I mean, you're amazing, amazing man, and I love the work you're doing. Anytime I can support you, please let me know. And thank you for your work also at Howard and working with some of our programs as well. And congratulations on a wonderful show.
Okay, thank you so much. Hang on, we're going to come right back as we close out.
Yes, sir.